Good morning. All right, it may be an hour later, but it's still Monday, and we're moving on today with God. Today I want to talk to you about fantasy thinking and dread thinking. Now, you may not, have issues with these, but I most certainly have. I have lived in a lot of thinking that I found out later on was kind of grounded in fantasy. I have lived in a lot of procrastination, which I found had some of its core in what I've come to call dreadful thinking. So let me just start off with the dread thinking. I can remember years ago that I was standing out in my yard and there were leaves everywhere. I mean, thick cover of leaves. And I looked at this portion of the yard and I stood there and I was overwhelmed that it was going to take me at least 3 hours before I could finish it. And the dread that set in on me. And if you can, share this video while it's going on, please. I've got to remember to do that. So hit share and invite other people to come while we're doing this. So I was standing there and there was this thick layer of leaves and I thought, surely this is going to take me 3 hours. And the dread, the heaviness that came over me. And I thought, I'm never going to get finished with this. Of course, I stood there for a good 15 minutes probably dreading what I was needing to do and the heaviness that I literally felt. And I remember the Lord saying to me, Nancy, time it. Just time it. I'm like, what? So I'm like, okay, Lord. Okay, so I timed it and I started raking and I got done. 15 minutes, my friends. 15 minutes it took me once I got focused and once I, decided to do it. It took me 15 minutes. Now listen carefully. If you'll remember just a couple of minutes ago, I said I had already stood there for 15 minutes dreading doing it. Dreading that it was going to, and my mind was telling me it's going to take forever. This is going to be so difficult. So I spent as much time dreading it as it actually took me to do it. And so I was stunned. Now you'd think a college educated person, that maybe I would, that I would have been a little smarter than that. But this is our spiritual IQ, my friends, that we're working on, okay? Whatever your natural IQ is or isn't, there's hope for you that you can learn the things of God. So then he's like, now go inside. And I stood there in front of the dishwasher. Now, I know this is simple stuff, but this is how God begins to work in our lives sometimes. I stood in front of the dishwasher. I thought, this is going to take... I dreaded sorting out the silverware. I mean, you would have thought that I was being asked to dig a 6-foot ditch. Stood in front of that dishwasher. How many of you know I was in a season of depression? It was a low-grade depression. I was functioning, but I had a low-grade depression running just barely underneath the surface. So everything felt heavy. Everything was going to be difficult. There's no way that I'm going to get it done. Do you hear the dread thinking? So I stood in front of that dishwasher and God said, set the timer on your microwave and I want you to empty the dishwasher. You know what happened. It was like 7 minutes. 7 minutes is all it took. But I guarantee you the feelings that I was having based on the thinking that I was entertaining is that it was going to take me, I don't know, I guess I thought maybe an hour. And so I would put it off, shuffle through the house. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Shuffle through the house. And just lethargic and just, oh my goodness. But what he was addressing was not the fact that I needed to be a better housewife and not that I needed just to get my chores done. What he was addressing was this foreboding, dreadful thinking that I had allowed to become a stronghold in my life. And the only way at that time to break through that was he had to give me this very practical exercise to do, which was time it. Time it, Nancy, because he wanted me to have fact to come against that lie. Truth to come against that lie. You can only keep saying no to something for so long before you eventually give into it. So if a lie comes to you and you're like, no, that's not true, no, that's not true, after a while it just wears you down. Eventually you have to turn and say, no, that is not true. Here is what is true. And you have to face that lie with the truth. So that is a part of the battle, the fight to renew the mind. So God is very good. There is nobody that can raise you, train you, equip you to live free like the Holy Spirit. And so in that season of my life, he established time it. Time it and see, Nancy, what is really true. And then I was able to begin to slowly but surely break. Now, that dreadful feeling and thinking still came over me. That cloud of procrastination still would come over me. It still has the opportunity to come over me now that I'm in new seasons of my life and I'm facing things that I'm not quite sure how to do. I'm not quite sure what it's going to look like, but I know that I've got to step into it. And so great feelings of dread, of procrastination, of putting things off in my mind, saying that, oh, it's just going to be so difficult. I have no idea how to do it, which all of that may actually be true. But what God began to dismantle in my life years ago was the lie that it was going to take forever, because I needed to see the truth that if I would just follow his voice, if I would do as he was telling me, he would give me the power, he would equip me, he was with me. And I didn't have to wait to feel better. I didn't have to wait to feel better to get on with it and to move forward. So maybe one of you out there, maybe some of you know what I'm talking about, this heaviness, this deep heaviness that says, oh my goodness, I don't want to talk about things in my marriage, it's just too heavy, it's going to take too long, when it might end up being a 5-minute conversation that could actually bring resolve to a conflict, yet it just feels like it's going to take forever. So that's just a little snippet of this dreadful thinking where we must time it and say, no, you know what, today, I know some of you may, be looking for something a lot more theologically deep and this is pretty deep, my friends, when you're in a deep pit of dreadful thinking, and God can bring you out in 15 minutes. God could bring you out in 7 minutes. It can happen. And so the simplicity, we miss it sometimes, the simplicity of just getting on with it. One of my favorite Facebook quotes that I heard from a pastor in England named Roy Todd was, never underestimate the power of just getting on with it. I think it actually says, don't ever underestimate the power of quietly getting on with it. And that is one of my favorite truths. Let's just continue on. Let us continue on in these things. And I'm telling you, breaking old habit patterns of thinking. Another one is fantasy thinking. This is what I call fantasy thinking. And I have had to face and am facing again this serious temptation of fantasy thinking. Like, for instance, oh, I think I can squeeze in 3 more chores before I get to work, which makes me consistently late. Maybe it's something a little bit more serious. I think I could just have that drink, and I don't really think that's going to be a problem. I've been clean and sober now for 6 months, a year, and I'm feeling pretty good. And I think that maybe, I don't think that, that one drink will destroy my life and my relationships and everything that I've built over the last year. I think, that could be some fantasy thinking. Now, not because I think I'm just one drink away from, but recognizing that flesh never changes. It once destroyed me. And it would love for me to think that if I go back to it, it'll be okay. That's fantasy thinking. It's otherwise known as lies. But fantasy thinking keeps me in a realm that is got bumper pads around it, and it's fluffing my pillow, and it tells me things that lure me again back into what seemingly is innocent in the beginning, but has tremendous destruction on the other side of it. Another part of fantasy thinking can be if you're determined to be the eternal optimist in a relationship and you think, oh no, I think they're going to change this time. I really do. I mean, now it's been going on for, 17 years, but I really believe this time. I think it's going to be okay. I really don't think that pervasive pattern is going to continue. I don't really think so. So what happens is that we're trying to control our pain. We are trying to, control the future. Now listen carefully, and avoid the real true work of what it means to live in the truth. Come out of fantasy thinking, come out of dreadful thinking, and to really live in the truth, because that's a part of God's invitation to us to move forward with Him. So welcome to Move On Mondays. To move forward with Him is I've got to face these areas. They may be glaring, or they may be tiny pockets of thinking that I've not yet seen, that keep me thinking things and staying in a fantasy realm. It's like fantasy faith. No, it's time to come out into the light. Listen, intimacy with God is with the lights full on. It is not low lights and soft music that lures you and lulls you into sleep. Intimacy with God, intimacy with other people, this is why we miss it sometimes. Real intimacy is when the lights are on and we finally have those conversations of real intimacy where we face the truth and we still decide we are going to continue together and we are going to continue to work this out. Fantasy always leads to something other than the real work, because everything should just be fine. For instance, like, I know that I've hurt you, but aren't you supposed to forgive me? And everything should be fine. Why do you keep bringing it up? Why do you keep pointing it out? Okay, well, maybe I've forgiven you, but trust is a whole nother issue. It's fantasy thinking to think that you can hurt people continuously. I had to learn this, that I had hurt people, and watching their pain, that was a major reality check for me, and I needed it. And the people who discipled me told me, pain is going to be a great teacher to you, Nancy. You're going to need to watch consistently the pain that you inflicted on other people when they don't trust you quickly, because it's a reality check of the depth of what you actually did. Now, I was forgiven, but now we were in the deep reality work of God working in my life. And it became a gift to me that someone would actually be willing to sell their trust to me, and that I would be willing to do the labor and work to buy that trust back by becoming trustworthy. They did not owe me to trust me in the first 5 minutes out of the gate. But of course, fantasy thinking is, well, you should just be like, I'm sincere. You should believe me. But when I had to see the deep reality checks of the process of rebuilding relationships, I was blessed that there were people in my life still willing. They're commanded to forgive me. That's not even an issue, okay? But they were not commanded to trust me. That was something that I was going to need to earn. Ooh, that'll crush your pride. That'll crush self like nothing else. Because everything within you wants to defend you and now again be the victim that people will no longer trust me. Well, I've been untrustworthy. Boom, reality check. Okay? Boom, this is the reality. Whew, it was like, and to have to face that. Wow, that person is suspicious of me. They are not trusting every word I say. I wonder why that is. Boom, getting ready to crack fantasy thinking is well, my being deceptive, my selfishness has required that person to be suspicious of me. Major reality check. So fantasy thinking can be on many different levels. Just the fact that you keep telling yourself that you're not going to be late again, even though you're trying to squeeze in 3 different things, and I'm just going to do these other 14 phone calls, but I think I can make it. No, you're not going to make it. You're going to be consistently late, okay? Consistently late again. Why? Because you keep telling yourself something that's not actually true. If you're supposed to be somewhere at 9:30, it takes you 15 minutes to drive there, and at 9:10 you say, I think I can get this next load of laundry put on. I think I can, edge the yard. I think that I can, change out the oil. You're in fantasy thinking because you're going to have to leave at 9:15 to get there. In the world of reality, you're going to have to leave at 9:15 to get there at 9:30. So at 9:10, you know what you need to be doing? Don't start a load of laundry. Get to the car. Here's what you got to tell yourself is get to the car. I mean, this is like deeply spiritual, my friends. And get to the car. Grab your stuff. Run for the car. Get in the car. Because if you're going to be there by 9:30, you've got to start the car by 9:15. Now, this is where God has to begin. And sometimes he starts in what seemingly are the small things because he's getting ready to have to show us where we are steeped in fantasy thinking. Or we might be steeped in dread thinking and we put things off and we put things off. And that leads to a deep heaviness. So I know these are just snippets. I know these are just like taking out small bits of this, but to make you aware, these may be, again, some of the things that keep you from moving on with God. Because we oftentimes are still trying to manage the outcomes. This is why we don't want to face truth. It's too painful. And when you begin, listen to me carefully, when you begin to face truth with God, the only one I can face truth with, I can't face it by myself. I must face it with him. He walks with me. He shows me things. And when that hit comes, that hit of truth that comes, that hits me really, really tough, he is my comfort. And he and I walk together. Because when I'm going to face those truths in my life, my own habits, my relationships, all of that, I am basically signing up to no longer be in control of the outcome. I'm no longer in control of the outcome. I don't know what other people will do with that truth. I don't know exactly now what will come. So when we are avoiding pain, we are avoiding uncertainty, and we are avoiding the real, true work of discipleship that it takes to begin to move forward. And Holy Spirit knows you better than anybody else. He knows which ones to begin to focus in on. And the great ripple effect, the great domino effect of when he began to deal with me in the time it season of my life. Just time it, Nancy, just time it. And he broke that foreboding, procrastinating off me at a certain level. And now I have to walk that out. There's a consistent work that happens because that was a pretty deeply ingrained pattern for me that would want to revisit me oftentimes. And I have to face that. And I have to recognize I'm doing these avoiding behaviors again because I'm not, ready to, or willing to face maybe not just a truth, but to face work, that this is going to take work and it's going to be uncomfortable in the learning process at this new season. So those are some of mine, but yours might be, something else. But to just show you the process that God is going to absolutely encourage you to walk forward with him, to move on. And I want you to be encouraged in that. All right? So, fantasy thinking, dread thinking, they can be completely dealt with. But we have to be willing to let him be the one to do it. Be willing to face that, to be willing to face it on many different levels in our lives, in our own habits, in our own thinking, in our relationships with others. And so I want you to be encouraged today. Oh yes, God can move us forward most definitely, even on Mondays. Don't dread Mondays. Take hold of them and let God begin to shoot you out into your week of moving on with him. All right, so I hope that you will like this, that you will comment, that you will share this with other people, with your friends. Encourage them to come and like my public page, Nancy McCready, NB McCready. That's on Instagram and here on my public page on Facebook. NancyMcCready.com is my website. We're in a big season of shift, of moving on with God, and these are just a few of the things that I hope help you. So be blessed today. I look forward to seeing you next week, 2 weeks from today, on March the 5th. I will fly out for Poland, and I am looking forward to being there with everyone. And I'll spend 3 weeks there working alongside pastors and churches and leaders, establishing the processes that are necessary to not just gather people, but to build big people in this season. So I look forward to getting to Poland and seeing all my great friends there. All right, I will see you soon. Love you all. Bye.